about a month to go before you get things going with USC. But with who you're playing first right off the bat, what do you feel like you have to accomplish in this month's time to get ready for that first one?
Well, it's any first game. You got to do a lot of things, but obviously this is heightened when you got the Heisman Trophy winner and a ranked team right off the bat. But it's no different every fall camp. These guys got to get out here. We got to work them into game condition. We got to put them in adverse situations, and we got to test all the different scenarios that we can. And we got to find out the guys that can succeed in those adverse situations and take those guys to USC with us.
What goes into truly turning the page from last year?
Yeah, last year's so long ago now for most of these guys. I think the coaches, have a hard time more than the player. We got a lot of new players that are excited to be out here, and they know this is a process to build a program, and they're just competing for jobs. So I don't think they even consider even a part of that from last year.
How different of a feel is it for this first practice of fall camp compared to last year's first practice?
It's a huge difference when every guy on the field within reason today knows what's going to happen, what the periods are, what the expectations are. You hear leaders now out on the field telling guys what we're doing next instead of coaches having to self-start everything. Players are doing that, and that's a big step forward in your program. And then you got a lot of bodies. We had 114 guys out here today. That's a big difference from last year.
What strides do you feel like the offensive line has taken these last several months in spring?
Well, I think Angus McClure is one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. I've known him a long time. He's been in the Pac-12, and I think he's got a process. He's got a rhythm of how he teaches. And I just complimented the O-line when we first started. I saw more offensive linemen in the meeting rooms by themselves this summer, checking film, being in there with other young offensive linemen and coaching each other and watching game film and technique film than I've ever seen. So I think that in itself is beneficial that the older players are around here helping the younger players, and they've got a coach that they can know and trust and know that he's going to develop them for that first game.
Speaking on position groups, Coach, is there one that maybe you think people could be sleeping on this upcoming season that we need to keep our eyes on?
All of them. I mean, just look at the papers. All the groups.
You going to use that, being picked 11th in the conference? Has that been mentioned with your guys? Is that being used as motivation?
No, we don't mention that with the players. I mean, we when we're 5-0, we don't look at the newspapers, so we got to do it the other way around too. But I think the going down to media day and just some of that those guys who went down with me come back and they talk, but we don't pin up who the guys' articles and do all that kind of stuff, because that can be a poison when you're winning, and it can also be a poison when you're losing. So we got to be realistic with what we see in the mirror and what we see on the film every day.
What do you need to see this year to know that the program's headed in the right direction?
That's a question I get asked all the time. I think that if we worry about the first game and then the next game, and we all buy into this program, we buy into how we practice and how hard you have to play to win football games, and that you have a chance to compete and win jobs, and you do that and you get better every week, I think that takes care of itself, and at the end of the year you see success. And if you're worried about it and you're always evaluating the scoreboard and you're evaluating the record and you wear yourself out, you don't just do your job. That's a hard thing to do, right? That was not what we expect last year in this program and this community, and that's on the coaches more than the players. We got to get that fixed.
Why was it important to you to bring back the jerseys from the 2007 season to replicate that?
Yeah, it wasn't specifically the 2007 season. It was more the stripes from the 1990 team on the top of the helmet that then the striker stripe goes on. So we added that, and the caps on the sleeve that not only was in 2007 but was also in 2010 when Nike changed over. It was a different cap, but it had the white on the shoulders, and we put on the bigger numbers from the mid 2000s, and we looked at a lot of different jerseys and we tried to add a little bit of the past, identify ourselves and make it kind of what the players wanted and what they looked at, and then drive this thing on from there. So we used a little bit of a lot of different things. We haven't even that was the base stuff, but we've still got the Pac logo for the helmet. We're trying to get maybe the old school one for one of the games. We got the 150th anniversary logo. We had a lot of different things that we're going to show that the players have all like. But we didn't just go, this year is the year. We looked at everything. Josh Hoover and Gabby and my staff, some of the older players, they worked their butts off. We went through on my computer. There's hundreds of different iterations before we went, okay, that's got a little bit of everything in it, and the players liked it, and then we got so we can match that stuff. So that was the whole plan on that.
Coach, we went a little into the process right there about jerseys and selections and whatnot. How much creative control though do you have as a head coach when it comes to that?
Well, I have the final say once they give us the there's obviously our athletic department has the fonts, the colors, the logos that we can use, and then we take it from there and we go through what we want and we put that all together. And I learned a valuable stuff from Washington State with the Coug logo and Oregon with the O, that you can't change stuff all the time. You got to stick into your brand, and then when you walk through airports, people know what that brand is. And if you change it constantly, then they don't. Like, you can walk across anywhere in the country and you see that certain A and you know what that shirt is, or you see that O or that color, and we're trying to build that brand. I mean, we're Nevada football, so everything you see within reason around here says Nevada football on it, so with our logo.
You guys obviously don't enter camp with a solidified starter at quarterback. I guess what needs to happen for somebody to rise above the group and for you guys to know, okay, that is our starter?
Yeah, well, I mean, that goes on in practice, but Brendan came out of spring and has done a good job in summer, so he took most of the first reps today. But you also have to get other quarterbacks. It's a long season, we had a suspension last year at that position. We had to change. Shane got hurt and missed games, so I wish it was like you just go, you're the starter and all the other guys are backups, you play the season. But that's not college football, so there's a time in there where the players know who the starter is. They see it in practice. They probably know it before the coaches, and the coaches keep pushing the other guys. But we have an administrative chart that they look at in the locker room. I mean, they know who's taking the first reps, and then they know, if a guy has a bad day, there may be a guy moving on any position. But obviously, quarterback is the most stable of those positions because the players have to feel that. But they also have to be confident if the backup comes in. So, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. So.
How do you guys enter from a health standpoint going into fall camp?
I think we're obviously as healthy as we've been even, since a couple weeks ago. We've still got a few guys down there that are going to miss some time. We're still got a couple guys that aren't here yet that are still getting their degrees and paperwork. But we've got, we can have 120 here, and I think we got 112 or 113 actually practicing, and then a couple down in the pit just rehabbing still. But you see the positions out there. We're 5-6 deep right now at a lot of positions, and I think that's comfortable when you've got 2 or 3 that are fighting for the job. When we didn't have that at a lot of positions last year.
A little off topic from the Wolfpack, but obviously the Pac-12 news has been, kind of at the center of headlines of late, and you spent a decade there. So I guess what are your thoughts on what the Pac-12 is going through and whether it may or may not have a future?
Yeah, I mean, college football is usually you don't get all this stuff going on right before camp. It usually goes on early in the summer, and I know the Pac-12 TV deal has caused a lot of ripples all across college football, and if they don't get a TV deal lined up, they got guys fighting just like to go, to stay, to keep their teams in. There's a lot of that stuff going on, which really shouldn't be happening this late in the fall. It really gets to be troublesome for any conference when you have this kind of turmoil when teams are going into camp. I don't remember that happening in my career. Maybe not many times anyway, where that stuff usually happens in early June, and then all the repercussions and the ripples happen. But right now, with all this going on, when teams are already in camp and games are 3 weeks from Saturday, it's pretty crazy.
I don't know that it's on life support, but it's certainly not in a strong point. I mean, is that disappointing for you to see, just knowing what that kind of meant to your career and how good of the football was there?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of us that are out there really wondering what's going to happen with the. When I grew up, even I grew up in the Midwest, it was the Big Ten and the Big Ten and the Pac-10 and the Rose Bowl. Like that was the deal, and there were, all the way back to the Pac-8, and coaches that I coached with. So, I hope this all gets straightened out. I know everybody's jockeying for position. I'm sure our administration's in the middle of that too, and everybody's got to be looking to the future and where their program's going to line up in there. And one thing that the head coaches talked about down in Las Vegas was how the camaraderie and how solid the teams in this conference have been, although there's still a little bit of turmoil this summer. But this conference has been in the outside of all the turmoil and are really, in most sports, are doing really good things on a national stage.
You worried at all that it might impact the Mountain West in terms of, schools kind of?
I mean, I don't worry. I worry about our practice this night walkthrough. I worry about what we're going to do to that. But I think it's going to. I mean, I think there's always ripples, repercussions. There's changeover. I just think it's unfortunate it's all going on at the start when everybody should be talking about the games of college football, and we're still doing this stuff in the middle of early August, July. That we're still doing all this stuff nationwide.
Coach, I don't get up here that often, so I need to ask you if you could you comment on Chris Smalley and his possible future with the program?
Chris Smalley is started 2 or 3 games for us last year. He's in a real battle there at outside linebacker, and we've got 5 or 6 guys there at outside linebacker that are all competing, and they'll be moving around in there. Elijah Winston, Marcel Walker, both back. John Maldonado, we redshirted last year. You got Chris Smalley. We've got some other guys still trying to get here. We brought in D'Angelo Davis, who we think's got a bright future. So, I mean, that's a good thing when you're talking about all those bodies, but Chris certainly helps us on special teams. He can flip to play D-end at times in our pass rush stuff. He's got a lot of ability. He's healthy. He came out of high school. He hadn't been healthy. Stayed healthy all last year. He's put on 20 pounds, and he's doing what a young college football player should do. He's developing.
Thank you.
Yep.
When you look at your guys' schedule, you mentioned USC, but you also host Kansas. Do you like 2 power conference schools in the non-conference schedule? Or?
I was a big fan of bringing a Big 12 team to Mackey Stadium. I think the trajectory of our program and what we feel like we're going to do in the future and the confidence we have in our players, that coming down the line here, there's going to be some really good games. And when you can get a Big 10 or a Big 12 or a Pac-10 team to come to Mackey Stadium, you have to take those opportunities. And these guys, they want to play those games, and my coaches want to play those games, and we're going to develop this team into being fired up about those games. And Kansas was, that's a growing program. They're developing that coaching staff. Has done a great job, and they're coming out to Mackey, and they've got one of the, every game we play early in the season is like great quarterback, great quarterback, great quarterback. So that gives our guys a lot of motivation to work hard at practice.
What are your thoughts of the Mountain West going back to 1 conference rather than 2 divisions? Is that something you like?
Yeah, I told they asked us that a bunch down at media day, and while it doesn't help your regional rivalries all that much, and it can affect those, if it gives this conference the best chance to be in the playoff, we have to do that. And I told Andy Avalos and some of those guys, I'm like, all these rivalries work out if we get to the championship game. Everybody will get a play if we get to the championship game. Whoever those rivalries are, if you're the 2 best teams, you'll get there. So I know there's downside to the rivalry thing, but if it has a chance to put the Mountain West on a national stage in the playoff, that helps every program in this conference.
You got a friend on the College Football Playoff Committee with Chris Ault. I guess, what did you think when he was named to that?
Well, I don't think you could put a better guy on that committee. So when I was at Oregon, we had Rob Mullins running that committee. So that I remember what Rob was doing and how much film he was watching and all the work he had to put in. And, I don't think anybody will outwork Coach Ault.
Can you touch on Jaden Dedman and Amani Johnson a little bit? 2 guys, 6-year guys. They started their careers here. They're going to end them. It doesn't seem like that's the norm in today's football landscape.
I love it. I love them. Brandon Talton, my 6 years guys are total Wolfpack. Jaden, all of them could have left. They could have gotten in the portal. They're total Wolfpack. They're bought in. They're leaders. They want to help us build this program. They believe in the University of Nevada, and that makes me really care for what they say. And when they come in and talk about stuff and they mention practice or what we're wearing or any of that stuff, I listen to those guys because 20 years from now, they're going to bring their kids back to this stadium, and they're still going to have a great tradition. And, when guys jump around conferences, I don't know necessarily where you go back to when you're done playing, So I think we're losing that in college football, where guys bring their family back and say, "Hey, I was on 4 championship teams," or "This was my place." And then, if you're only at a place a year, I don't know which place do you go back to. It's like, "Oh, I'm going to go put their jersey on and sign a 1-day contract so I can retire at Nevada." I don't know how that's all going to work with guys jumping around all the time.
What are some of the biggest challenges during fall camp when you're adding in new guys who weren't there in the spring?
Yeah.
What are those challenges?
Well, we get them in the summer. That's a good thing now. They've been here, most of them. There's very few guys that weren't here for the whole summer program. So that's helpful. But coaches at that time, they have to be smart of knowing that those guys are a little bit behind. They may not know everything, but they can play hard when they're in there. And you got to pick and choose when you get them in, what you do. But they're on a fast track. Right? We got 25 practices to get them ready to play a football game. So it's fast right now for those guys.